Unidentified Flying Object, Bridgeport, Michigan, 1966. What I'm about to share with you, I have written about many times and have been published a number of times. I want to tell the story complete here with some additions that I recently remembered. The spring of 1966 was unseasonably mild. It was I was 11 years old, I should say, and terrified out of what was going on in Michigan. I never have understood why I was so terrified, but I was. And what was going on was a major UFO flap, which is a point where there is an incredible amount of UFO activity. Things became quite tense here in Michigan with sightings of strange and aerial phenomenon being made nightly, and by very credible witnesses. The sightings caused such a stir that the Air Force sent in Dr. J. Allen Hynek to find an explanation and hopefully calm the nerves of the residents of the state. What he suggested may have been the cause, only served to make people more anxious and more nervous because it was so absurd. Dr. Hynek suggested that people were seeing may have been swamp gas, St. Elmo's fire, will-o'-the-wisp. Those who actually saw one of the UFOs resented his suggestion because the witnesses, including myself, knew what they cited was not swamp gas. Let me give you an overview before I give you the details of my sighting, as well as the sighting of my friend John Mertz and his mother had made at the same time my sighting was made, though about a mile and a half away from me. On a quiet day in March 1966, 7 eyewitnesses reported seeing an unidentified flying object maneuvering over Livingston and Washtenaw counties in lower Michigan. These sightings had great credibility as they were made by police officers from 2 different counties. Besides the police, there were more than 100 other witnesses, which included William Van Horn, who was a civil defense director. There were also a dozen students watching the football-shaped object from their dormitory near Hillsdale College. They were also spotted by a nearby airport and in a local swamp by a farmer and his son. A few days later, on March 17th, 2 police officers from Washtenaw County saw 3 or 4 red, white, and green circular objects that were oscillating and glowing, and they were seen near Milan Township. They called Willow Run Airport, but they could not confirm the objects by radar. 2 more Washtenaw deputies tried to follow the same types of objects in the northern part of the county on March 20th. Reports also came in from Livingston and Monroe counties, or areas also. Dexter patrolman Robert Hunneville reported having seen the object in the sky at Quigley and Brand roads around 9:15 to 9:45 p.m. He reported the object again, red and green flashing lights, came close to the ground, hovered above a scout car, and was joined by a second object as it rose up. One of the more spectacular sightings was by Frank Manor and his family, who saw the lights from their farm home on the Guinness Road. Manor told, "I got within 500 yards of that thing, and it looked like a pyramid shape to me. It had a light here and a light there, and what looked like a porthole. It wasn't like the pictures of flying saucers, and it had a coral like surface. I've trapped all over this area, and I've never seen anything like it." Mr. Manor also said that the object by its own lights appeared to be the length of a car and had a hazy mist under it as it hung above the ground. This was also observed by Manor's son, a member of the Dexter High School track team, and of course by Manor's wife. All witnessed the object. Mr. Manor said the object rose up to the treetops and then fell back to the ground, and he said it became different colors while on the ground, blue and then red in the trees, and changed colors again as it came back down. He also reported that it made a sound not unlike a ricochet of a bullet and like a siren of a real high frequency. Police Chief Robert R. Taylor and Patrolman N.G. Lee came to the farm in response to Mrs. Manor's call, and they heard the noise. Lee remarked that he thought it was an ambulance at first, and the chief's son, Robert, 16, also said he saw the red vehicle in the sky at about 10:30 p.m. Washtenaw County Sheriff's Deputy Sheriff Beaufort Bashore also observed it, It looked like an acre or like an arc, he said. It was round, and we turned around and started following it through Dexter for another 5 miles, he reported. And the deputy also reported that it left with a great burst of speed. It was about 1,500 feet above the ground and estimated it moved along at about 100 miles per hour. Late in March, the Air Force, as I said earlier, sent in Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who dismissed the sightings as possibly swamp gas. Hynek threw himself into the frying pan when he, at a press conference at Detroit Press Club, made the following statement, and I quote, "The lights resemble tiny flames, sometimes seen at night on the ground, sometimes merely floating above it. Marsh gas usually has no smell, but sounds like the small popping explosions similar to a gas burner lighting. The gas forms from decomposing vegetation. It seems likely that as the present spring thaws came, the gases, methane, hydrogen sulfide, and phosphine, resulting from the decomposition of organic material, had been released from the ground." Hynek made matters worse by suggesting that youth playing pranks with flares added to the excitement. He also dismissed a photo taken as having been the moon and Venus by people who must have been extremely stupid if that were indeed the case, which I'm sure wasn't. The witnesses were extremely angry at Hynek for not conducting a truly scientific investigation into matters, just finding any suggestion out or throwing any suggestion out in hopes to quell people's fears. The sightings continued into April and May, and Michigan made the national news frequently. So let me turn now to my own sighting, which I believe was in June, for the night in question was very, very warm. If I could find out what night Peyton Place aired and what time on TV, I could give the night exactly, because I made my sighting when that program was on the air. It was very important that it is very important that I add that all through March till the sightings let up, I lived, as stated earlier, in an abnormal state of extreme fear. And on this night, my mom had just made a cup of tea for her and I. Her chair was right by our front living room door, and she was sitting there, and I was sitting on the floor with my back against her chair, where I could look out the window. My dad was watching Peyton Place from his white and orange recliner, as well as my sister Roseanne in another area of the room. And I looked out the door, and it was very dark, and I saw it, a large green oval shape moving silently across the night sky. I must have watched it for maybe 2 or 3 minutes till it was out of sight. I was paralyzed with fear, so much so that I wanted to yell out so that Dad and Mom and Roseanne could see it also, but I couldn't make a sound. That makes me angry yet today, for I would have loved for them to have seen this bizarre object for themselves. And after it was over, I didn't think anyone would believe me, so I kept my mouth shut for years before I spoke of it to my mother. I checked the newspaper the next night and watched the news on WNEM Channel 5, that was NBC at the time, to see if anyone else had observed the same thing in the Saginaw County night sky. There was no mention of it. I thought for years no one else had seen the object that I had seen, but I remembered someone else had. How I could have forgotten about this or something this important to me, it kind of boggles my mind. My best friend was a classmate, John Mertz, and we frequently took turns staying overnight at each other's house. He lived on Airport Road with his mom, who was divorced, not a common then as it is now. But anyway, I don't remember how it came up, but John's mom told me that the week before, which would have coincided with my sighting, that she and John had seen a green glowing object just up the road as it passed silently overhead, just above the height of the streetlights. Like me, she had no idea what the UFO might have been, and it didn't make me feel any better except to know that someone else had indeed seen the exact same thing that I had. There was one other event that may or may not have been related, at least to the odd fear that I was feeling, but that happened a long time ago when I was a very young child. But there was another odd incident again at night And again, we were all gathered in the living room watching TV. It was after, probably several weeks after I sighted the UFO. I think my brother Bill was present with us at this time also, and we were all watching TV anyways, when there was a huge crashing sound against the outside wall up by the eave of the side of the house. It scared the hell out of all of us. I had actually felt the house shake for an instant. Dad jumped up, grabbed the flashlight, and was going out to see what had made the sound. I don't remember much of anything really scaring my dad. He served in the foxholes and the front lines in Italy during World War II, so I guess probably nothing fazed him too much. But Mom got so angry that he gave up. She didn't want him to go out there. What did she fear? She said she thought he might get hurt, but by what? However, the next day, we went out, all of us, and looked up at where the crashing sound had come from, and there was nothing. Nothing at all to see. So that still remains a mystery today. How could something impact that area of our home and not leave some kind of mark? There, as I said, there was another event, but that was a good 6 years before, so I'll save that for another time. But ever since and after all these years, I still wonder what I saw and who or what was piloting that oval, self-luminescent UFO.